Welcome everyone to the Global Spaceport Alliance webinar series. I'm James Corsi, Executive Director, and we have a really exciting session for you today. The business case for spaceports. So thank you all for participating. Thank you to all the speakers. And let me just take you through a couple of things before we get started. First of all, the membership of GSA has continued to increase. And in January at our summit, we had some 85 members, and we've just broken 100 as of July of this year. So we're continuing to grow. We're also heading to follow up on our Milan meeting with just prior to IAC with the FAA last year. We're going to continue that in Sydney this year on September 28th. Put on what we're calling the second GSA International Spaceport Forum. It's being sponsored by RS&H, and we're anticipating some 100 to 150 people in attendance. This has become such a special event that we're planning to continue it every year just prior to IAC. And so that you're aware, next year, it's going to be in Turkey, in Anatolia, on October 4th. So put that into your diaries right away. Also, we're continuing, obviously, with the GSA Spaceport Summit, which this year is going to continue in Orlando on January 27th. We have a title sponsor, RS&H, and platinum sponsors, Merrick and BRPH. This summit meeting, as you probably are all aware, kicks off what we call Commercial Space Week. And so our summit meeting is followed directly by Space Mobility, which is with the US Space Force, and SpaceCom. So please make sure that you register for the Commercial Space Week as soon as possible. As members of GSA, you do get a discount for that. Obviously, we want to thank our sponsors for all of their support. We wouldn't be getting to our goal of over 100 members without their support. RS&H and Merrick, BRPH, Parsons, and the Italian Trade Agency, and HDR and MITRE Corporation. Then finally, before I hand it off, I should say, to our chairman, I just want to make sure you're aware that we're going to have another webinar on August 27. It's going to be Spaceports as Smart Hubs. So make a note to register for that. And now what I'd like to do is turn it over to George Neild, our chairman, who is going to introduce the panel and moderate the session. Thank you. George, over to you.
Thanks, James. At GSA, we like to say that spaceports are more than gateways to space. They can also be engines of local and regional economic growth. Today we're going to explore how spaceports can drive investment, attract commercial tenants, create high-tech jobs, and stimulate the growth of innovation ecosystems. To help us better understand this topic, we have four very well-qualified representatives from four very different kinds of spaceports that will be sharing some of their observations and experiences. We have John Oberst, who's president and CEO of the Pacific Spaceport Complex, Alaska. Jimmy Spence, business development specialist from Houston Spaceport. Ross Hulbert, business engagement manager from Spaceport Cornwall. And Jimmy Moffatt, vice president of spaceport operations for Space Florida. John, why don't you start us off by providing us with a little background on the Pacific Spaceport Complex, Alaska?
George, and thanks for having me. And this is my first venue with my colleagues in the space business with Spaceports. there's something to be learned from all of them. And I've been down to Florida, and I need to go visit the rest of them because there's everybody's different, and you'll hear that when we describe our spaceports. For example, up in Alaska, we were established in 1991, and as a state corporation in the statute. So we're established in 1991 under the state statutes. We're a state corporation. We operate the Pacific Spaceport Complex, Alaska, which is the emblem that you see in there. So Alaska Aerospace is the overarching entity operating that one spaceport. We have more on the way, and we'll get into that later. The PSCA is the first FAA licensed vertical orbital commercial spaceport. So we were out front a long time ago, started in 1991, but the first launch was 98. We've got 34 launches to date, 31 of them successful, and I define that leaving the launch stool. So we got more coming. We've got one on the stool now. We have a global portfolio that includes a system relative to the topic today, and that's Range Safety and Telemetry System, which we call RSTS. And we deploy that globally to support launch operations at spaceports around the world. And we just completed one in Australia. Our community impact, if you look at the bubbles out there, they're huge. We bring in as a revenue stream about $16 million into the economy each year. That's growing. We have about 50 employees. 10 of them are here in Anchorage. 30 of them are out in Kodiak. Kodiak is a island off the coast of Alaska, and it's about a 45-minute flight from Anchorage. We support businesses throughout the state, internships in accordance with the statutes. We have several purposes in there, and that is promote STEM. And one of the tools we use are internships. We don't have any state funding. We haven't received state funding since 2014. We've been self-sufficient up until now and doing fairly well. Our growth in jobs has been 20% over the past year, and we expect another 20% over the next year. So that the impact to the economy is pretty significant. We contribute to a variety of support, like local fairs, fundraising. We're in chambers of commerce. We establish a lot of community pride, especially on the island of Kodiak, by maintaining a constant relationship with the community. And I'm going to my next slide. I was told to brag about our spaceport, so I'm going to do it. This is what we got. It was built in 1998 on Kodiak on 3,700 acres of state land. It's shared with the public. So unlike the federal ranges, we have to have symbiotic relationship with the public for our launches, and that can be challenging at times. Our launch azimuth 110 to 220 for polar and sun sync orbits between 59 and 100. We're pretty much the go-to for national security launches for polar smaller vehicles in the United States. We have full complement of facilities, and it may be a little hard to see with the slide on the video here, but weather, range control, we have an alternate site we call an alpha site, mission support facility, instrumentation field, payload processing facility, which is actually underutilized, unlike the eastern and western ranges. And then a rocket motor storage facility as well, out on the range for solid rocket motors. We have low risk operations, stable year-round weather. We're uncongested, we're flexible and responsive. The layers of decision makers in Kodiak is very small compared to a federal range. We still adhere to all the regulations and policy, but we can react fairly quickly because we're not on a federal range. And we're accessible. We're accessible by air. We have an airport that can take everything up until, it can take a 747, but it doesn't because it can't turn around, but we can take C-17s and other cargo aircraft in there. And we have regular air flights in from the mainland. The road is state-owned all the way out to the site and maintained. We have an ice-free port. And we have a variety of other methods of bringing equipment out to the site from Kodiak, from the port or the airport. We can heavy helo it out if we have to. So this is kind of what we're here for today, beyond launch. If you look at the blue bubble, the spaceport services, that's really the crux of what everything else is derived from. So we want to capitalize on that. So you take those services that we provide out in Kodiak, and we call it our core business. And then we take that and we start looking for linkages and moving out into the state in particular, but also globally. And those linkages include university partnerships within the state and other joint ventures, which I'll get into in a little bit. But we want to capitalize on our core business. We want to scale, and we want to scale starting in Kodiak. But there's a limit to what you can do just based on the land mass out there and the tempo that you can handle. So we want to scale beyond Kodiak. And Alaska is a uniquely positioned 20% of the U.S. landmass, the longest coastline in the United States, low population density, manageable air traffic routes. We are overlooking the largest body of water on the planet, the Pacific Ocean. So if there's a state that can scale launch, it's Alaska. And we're looking at doing that now, and we are pursuing a license for orbital launch out of Poker Flat Research Range north of Fairbanks. And we have about 3 other locations in Alaska that we'll pursue after that. So we're capitalizing on that core business and scaling on it. So more spaceports equals more launch equals more service requirements, and we're going to meet that with efficiencies. We do it already. We have a full-time and a part-time workforce. We activate the part-time workforce for launch and maintain a core facility operations sustainment outside of launch. We can move that force around the state to our other launch complexes as they're developed and licensed and operational. Our multi-use workforce is mostly in state, and we want to keep it that way. So we're trying to invest in internships and community engagement, university partnerships, and developing more linkages to us. Specifically, Poker Flat is one of them. We're going to help them get to orbital up there. But we want to build our workforce within the state. So reaching out every avenue we can to do that, we're going to do that. From a diversification perspective, for us, probably the biggest one we have right now is range safety and telemetry system. It's a proprietary system developed by Alaska Aerospace, and it's certified with flight safety by the U.S. government. And we have a history with that. And because of the history and the U.S. government participation, which is really essentially sharing a significant amount of the risk involved in flight safety, we're sought out all over the globe for that system. It's deployable. It's 5 to 7 containers, and we can move it just about anywhere and bring it back. And we use it for our own launches for off-axis capabilities as well. So when we diversify, we're also looking for launch revenue that is like that and that is recurring. And it's from a recurring investment perspective, we're looking for investment. And in Alaska, that would take the form of a joint venture with a private capital firm that's looking to bring in perhaps a startup. And we have discussions going on right now with folks to do just that. Some of them are very vanilla, straightforward, like a data center. We're having that discussion right now. And then some of them are more nuanced, but specifically related to space and launch, like aircraft generated launch programs. So that is, from an investment perspective, what we seek to diversify throughout the state and hopefully grow that throughout the state, anything aerospace related. And I'll refer to Florida specifically because I went and visited Florida. They have a phenomenal program down there, capitalizing on the advantages they have as a state with land and tax advantages, and also money to bring in investment. We're doing the same in Alaska, but we're just getting started. So I would refer folks to Florida if you want to get more savvy on a program that's very successful. Federal spaceport bonds is going to be very useful, in my opinion. We obviously haven't executed on that, but we're gonna probably take advantage of that. And then we have state bonding authority as well. So we will get into there for the projects that fit it. And I can give you one example. We need workforce housing at our site. We are remote and we make it work, but workforce housing with the increased tempo that we're anticipating is a must. So we're partnering with the state financing agency called ADA to help us develop that workforce housing on site. From a private perspective, there is a lodge offsite that has been open periodically. There hasn't been enough business out at the spaceport or that area for them to be open year round. We're engaging partner partnership opportunities with these private companies to bring that capability year round. And we believe we can do it. And there's synergies associated with that. There is tourism. We get 26 cruise ships a year into Alaska that we believe we can bring out for a spaceport tours and then also lodge activities at the same time, including a meal for the day. So those partnerships aren't joint ventures. They're just goodwill partnerships to generate business for all parties involved. And that's something that developed this year for the first time for Alaska Aerospace that I think is important for the community is I was invited for the first time as a state agency to join my state at SelectUSA, which is a foreign investment summit that occurs every year. This year it occurred in National Harbor in Maryland. And I was amazed at the amount of interest in foreign investment states. What came to the top was data centers. I would say 70% of the inquiries said, how can we put a data center in your state? Many of you have probably heard that, but our state is leaning into that, and we're going to take advantage of some of those inquiries. Each spaceport is unique and different, but so their business models are going to vary significantly based on their location and the specific services that they provide. But scale and diversification are universal. So we're really focusing on that, like I mentioned. And my last slide, this is what we want to look at, like in the end. We want to have about 4 orbital spaceports, 2 ranges. One of them already exists down off of Kodiak. The range up north exists too, but it's not ours. It's associated with the university. But we believe that the distinct advantages of Alaska allow us to get to this end state by utilizing our geography and all the other advantages with the air routes and the Pacific Ocean that I'd mentioned earlier. We're at an all-time high right now as far as interest in national security, specifically related to hypersonic launch and just launch demand in general. SpaceX changed the whole paradigm of space by bringing the cost down significantly. And the cadence that they've demonstrated proves that more stuff's going up and more stuff's going to have to be supported. So we're looking at, in Alaska, not heavy launch yet. We will entertain that, but we're trying to support the smaller launch vehicles in a higher cadence throughout the state. And if you look up north to Fairbanks, we're even looking at other than chemical launch technologies, companies that are in stealth mode that are interesting. It's not spin launch that are interested in coming to Alaska and utilizing our ranges and our space to bring their technology to bear. That's really Alaska Aerospace in a nutshell, and I hope I didn't overdo my time, George. Thank you.
No, that's great, John. Thanks. Good overview. Jimmy Spence, talk to us about Houston Spaceport.
Happy to be here, and I appreciate the invitation. Always happy to share with the GSA audience. So the Houston Spaceport, we are celebrating our 10th anniversary. In 2015, we were licensed as the 10th commercial spaceport in the U.S. by the FAA. And we feel like we've done a pretty good job, a little bit different approach than what Alaska's done for good reason. So being a horizontal launch spaceport, we felt that operations maybe shouldn't be the focus of how we go about developing our spaceport here in Houston. Really what we wanted to do with the spaceport was create a hub for aerospace businesses that would complement the activities that are going on at NASA Johnson Space Center, but provide a campus that was outside of the fence and a little bit more effective or accessible to folks. We figured that operations will come as the technology develops. We're in the middle of a large city. We have a lot of amenities that follow with that, including workforce and just being close to the airports and the international flights that the Houston airport system can provide. So we weren't worried about operations. Operations will come when operations come. But we felt that we had a real opportunity to kind of expand the aerospace footprint here in Houston, diversify the industry a little bit here, and provide a little bit of a different flavor for what spaceports can achieve. We've been pretty successful in that time. We've, as the city of Houston and the Houston airport systems, we've invested roughly $200 million in infrastructure and facilities here at the Houston Spaceport to push this thing growing. That's attracted roughly 200, well, within the next year or so, we plan to hit about 2,500 jobs here at the spaceport. We're just under 2,000 right now as a whole. And the companies that have located here have managed to attract roughly $10 billion in government contracts and work going on. So we feel very happy with the performance of those companies that have gone along the way. We have folks like Axiom Space, which have their assembly, integration, and testing facility for their space station modules that's at the spaceport. Intuitive Machines has consolidated all of their operations and manufacturing into a facility at the spaceport. Venus Aerospace has been developing hypersonic passenger aircraft technologies over the last couple of years. Collins Aerospace is still here at the spaceport, hanging on. We need to update the slide. Actually, we have a new tenant, a small company called BVI Machining, that is a supplier for Axiom and Intuitive Machines that have located at the spaceport. And of course, we have an aviation aerospace training center that's called the Edge Center. It's run by San Jacinto College here at the spaceport. Just touch on that partnership a little bit more, that it's been crucial. These folks have developed programs that train technicians that enable all of the work that's being done out here, whether it's composite fabrication, additive manufacturing, CNC, reductive manufacturing, everything from electronics and avionics. These guys really have done it all. We're very lucky that when we approached them with this concept of the Spaceport and Aerospace Workforce Training Center, that they said, yes, absolutely, we can do that. And it just so happens that San Jacinto College is consistently ranked as one of the top 10 community colleges in the country this year, coming in second place for the Aspen Prize for community colleges. But it's not just the community college level. We have partnerships with the Rice Space Institute, with David Alexander there, the University of Houston Clear Lake, which is a local four-year college. We have partnership with Texas A&M, as well as partnership with Texas Southern University. So we've been growing those partnerships over the years, and they've proved invaluable to developing the workforce that's needed for the industry. We're happy to say that these folks are growing and thriving. So some of the things that are going on currently at the spaceport that are underway, we have Texas Southern University is completing a $5 million hangar and flight school that's going to be here at the spaceport. The big thing that we've done is Taxiway Lima, that we're very excited about. This is the first phase of Taxiway Lima. It will run parallel to our 422 runway. This first 4,000 feet of taxiway will connect the spaceport development to the rest of the airfield here at Ellington, and open up roughly 50 acres of airside land for aeronautical use. So in addition to going after kind of your traditional aviation businesses, your MROs, and your fixed-based operators, we look to hopefully further blur the lines between aeronautical and aerospace with the development of new tenants along that taxiway. And I always like to kind of end my talks with this great land use plan that the fine folks at Jacobs helped put together for us. So if you see the buildings that are in the dark orange that are really squint, you can see it, are labeled 1, 2, and 3. Those are the existing facilities that Axiom and Intuitive Machines and Collins have constructed. The roads directly adjacent to those are already constructed along with all the utilities that are along the way. And then the rest of this 300 acres or so that is basically from that blue building right here going plan west is about 300 acres of developed land. This is kind of what we see as the future development for the Houston Spaceport. I call that job security. So I'm happy that it's there. We have a large project that's going to be very long term, but we're very excited to see what the future holds for us. We've had great experience with our tenants so far. Intuitive Machines just announced an expansion of their facility, which will be adding, I believe, an additional 40,000 square feet of production and office space, as well as a nice parking lot, which is good because they are running it against the wall there with that. And Venus Aerospace is also building a new facility to expand their engine testing capabilities here at the spaceport. So we're very happy with how it's developing and look forward to what the future holds.
Very good. Thanks, Jimmy. Appreciate it. Ross, what's going on at Spaceport Cornwall these days, and how did you get to this point?
Yeah, thank you. Well, that was fascinating. Two very different spaceports, and I guess for Cornwall, probably the most comparable one is Houston. So great to see all the success they're having. You guys are a few years older than us, so if that's the blueprint for where we could go, I'd be very happy with that. So yeah, so our project probably really started in 2019, although the UK government started the UK launch program a bit earlier in 2014 when they down selected a few sites. And then, of course, it was down to the individual sites to partner with an operator and, to be honest, learn a bit about space because we were working at the airport. We've got a lot of development areas. We're exploring opportunities around unmanned systems. So while we, of course, we applied to the program, in a way we were approached as a potentially suitable location and then learnt on the job. So it was a government program with some government funding to kickstart it. Of course, at first we got very excited and thought there was a lot more money than there ended up being. But in a way that was good because of course we realized that this has to be commercial, it has to stand up on its own 2 feet. So Spaceport is part of Cornwall Airport Newquay. We're a regional airport, but we're quite unique in the sense that we are not only the UK's first licensed spaceport and a commercial passenger airport, but we're also an aerodrome and a military base. So it gives us quite a lot of scope of things to do. I think probably comparable to some of the other spaceports, our geography is, you couldn't recreate that. So we were very quickly shortlisted due to things like, we have this extremely long runway, which we don't utilize as a regional airport, but that was what the Military of Defence built. We've got an uncongested airspace and we're close to the ocean. So, we very quickly went from non-space people to being the first licensed spaceport in the UK. And then our capital infrastructure that we needed to build in order to deliver the first launch was a lot less than the spaceports, no doubt you've been following in the rest of the UK, like Shetland and Sutherland, who are making great progress, but of course they've got to build big pads and big facilities, which for the most part we didn't really need to do because the spaceport team is able to be quite small during periods where we're not launching, and when we are, we really predominantly rely on the specialist expertise within the airport. So the ground operations, fueling, especially for horizontal launch, it was 90% aviation. We had the experience of being the first spaceport in the UK to do a launch. So we were created and then road tested all the legislation and the regulation. So there were definitely some lessons learned there. But I think while we got to the first launch and, no surprise, there were many successes with the first launch. Unfortunately, Virgin Orbit had a mission failure and weren't successful in getting their customer satellites into orbit. We were very keen to remember how we had proved our capability. We'd gone from just a regional airport to able to conduct a spaceport operation. The UK legislation and licensing had never been used before. But right from the beginning, we knew we could probably do this launch quite quickly and quite easily. So it was more a case of what do we get out of it. So if you don't know Cornwall, Cornwall is the most southwesterly tip of the UK. It's known, there's high value careers, thankfully, moving to the area now, but historically it's been a sort of place. A lot of people retire here. It's beautiful. There's beaches. We struggle to hold on to our young people because they leave and go to cities. So we thought, okay, UK government, if you want to do launches from Cornwall, we need to make sure there's enough economic opportunity here for Cornwall. So not only did we build the mid-integration facility where Virgin could integrate these customer satellites and take off on Cosmic Girl, we also invested in other facilities where businesses could come because they knew they wanted to be part of this exciting thing called space. And also a location like Cornwall, the fact that these companies haven't been here is not because they didn't want to be here. Now there was a reason why they could come. So recruitment for these companies is not difficult. They can say to their employees, do you want to be located at a nationally unique center for space? And also, do you want to be in one of the most beautiful locations anywhere in the UK? So we've been successful attracting these companies in, and thank goodness we did, because of course, probably like Houston, our business model is not based purely on launch fees. We're not expecting to see frequent cadence of launch like they're having in Alaska and Florida. We thought Virgin would probably launch once or twice a year at most. Of course, the last 2.5 years since the launch in January 2023, we've had no launches. So to be able to sustain ourselves really has been on the ancillary revenues we've been able to bring in, partly on back of the excitement of the businesses that are brought in, but also now leveraging the other capabilities that we have. Thankfully, Stratolaunch bought Cosmic Girl after Virgin Orbit went into administration, and then subsequently also thought, well, we better employ some engineers who know how to use Cosmic Girl. So our relationship with companies such as Stratolaunch has accelerated quite quickly because it's the same aircraft, it's largely the same team, and they have confidence that they know that we could operate that aircraft. So it has led on to some more interesting opportunities. I mentioned the facilities that we built around the Spaceport campus. So the integration facility is that building on the left there, the white one, and then our operations facility, which is sort of a combination of labs, workspaces, hot desks, the usual stuff, but providing a destination for these companies to base. And that's just on the Spaceport campus. So the airport site itself is 600 hectares, if that translates into US. I don't know what that to say is if it's not hectares, but it's big. So we had a bit of we did the launch in January in 2023. We opened our facility for the businesses to move into in April. Of course, it was shortly after COVID as well, and all we've been told is that businesses don't need to come back to the office. Thankfully, satellite manufacturing companies do actually need to be on site to do these things. So fast forward, the last 2.5 years, we have now created a cluster on site. So we're part of the wider Cornwall space cluster, but we've created this cluster of companies on site. Although I do want to ensure that people remember that we are a spaceport, not just a science park. So very much looking forward to bringing launch back. And like Jimmy said, operations will come when operations come, but also, very excited for when that comes around again. We want to maximize the opportunities of our unique operational ability. Like I said, aerodrome, spaceport, military base, vertiport potentially. So VTOL, we've got some drone companies in the building that we're advancing that. We have an MOU, if that, memorandum of understanding with the National Drone Hub, which is in Cornwall, where they've got lots of unmanned systems operating in segregated airspace. We're working with launch companies who have planned unmanned vehicles, which, other than NOTAMs, would be somewhat problematic to operate on a regular basis out of a commercial airport. So we're trying to work with our Department for Transport and the Civil Aviation Authority to try and create that user case to get some of these guys out of segregated airspace to be able to operate safely within commercial airspace. And we hope that will work as a bit of a pipeline really to when companies either outgrow the area they've got down at the National Drone Hub, which is 5,500 kilometers, I think, of segregated airspace, they can then transfer up to us. And then, really anticipating what we consider current airspace and future airspace. So, we know what's coming 5, 10, 25 years down the line as far as aviation is concerned, and ensuring Cornwall can play as close a role in that R&D as possible. And then we're also trying to attract investment across the rest of the site. I think we might talk about this later about the public or private ownership. So we are owned by Cornwall Council, which is the basically the local state council. So we have a business park, which you can see on the left there. That's been there for 15 years. And there was the previous government under David Cameron set up enterprise zones, which offered financial incentives for companies to move in. We did find that being council owned, it was slower than we would have liked for that development. There are businesses on that site, but it pretty much doesn't look that dissimilar to that diagram, which, as you can see, is not lots of buildings like in Jimmy's diagram. It's more fields ready for buildings. So after 15 years of the council really not being able to crack how to provide the capital investment that these companies wanted, we were asked to go and find a private sector partner to bring on. And then, of course, that all got reported. I'm sure we've had similar experience. That all got reported in the press that we were selling the airport, which we weren't. We were just bringing a partner on who could enable these investments to go along. And then right at the point when it was going to be presented to the administration, we had local elections, and then there's this completely new administration came in, and their first order of business when they met was to say, no, I'm not interested. So we've gone back now to being Cornwall Council owned, but they do assure me, and we'll find out in the next few weeks. I have a meeting next week where they're going to decide what level of autonomy we can have over the site. And they have said that they're aware that they need to make greater investments on the site, which is exciting and hopefully will enable us to deliver some of the things that we're trying to do. And this is just my last slide, is really just to sort of show the breadth of capability that we have and trying to maximize not only our site, but the site down at the National Drone Hub as well. And always interested to talk to any companies developing any R&D or interested in UK operations. So thanks so much.
Very good. Thank you, Ross. Okay, Jimmy Moffatt, what's the latest at Space Florida?
Hey, good morning, everyone. Thanks. All right. Yeah, so thanks for having us. And Jimmy Moffatt, Vice President of Spaceport Operations with Space Florida, and we are the state's independent special district. We're Aerospace Finance and Development Space Authority. So we look at every opportunity across the aerospace sector of business, not only at spaceports or licensed spaceports, but across the entire state of Florida. And here's, our mission is to build global and interplanetary hub for sustainable aerospace commerce. What that really means is we got to figure out a way to be sustainable without subsidies or the federal government intervention. So that's what we look for, is unique ways to generate revenue and be sustainable in the state of Florida. Some of our strategic objectives, obviously we want to maximize Florida's space infrastructure. We want to continue to be the global leader in launch cadence and mass to orbit. So we have a high focus on that. But there's other economic growth opportunities in the aerospace sector that feed commercial space, but also feed the aerospace industry as a whole, that we have the ability to look at. So we continue to do so. And then we also try to create solutions in this tough aerospace economy. And we'll probably talk about it a little bit later. The tax-exempt bonding was one of those things that we knew was going to be a big deal for the industry as a whole. And rising tides raise all boats. So if it was benefit us and it benefits everyone else, it's a good thing for the industry. So we look at those challenges and try to figure out a solution for that. And that's just a part of what we do in our everyday business. Unique thing, maybe it's not unique. We have the term aerospace defined in statute. And really what that gives us the ability to do is, if it's defined, it can tell us our reach. So there's not a gray area on if we should invest or put effort towards a venture. But aerospace is defined, and it's pretty broadly defined, that anything that supports the aerospace industry or the commercial space industry. We do two main portfolio business areas. One is the Spaceport Authority. So although we're statewide, we do have a Spaceport Authority on some of our owned assets, which I'll go through in a few minutes here, at the Cape and across the state. And it allows us to build, own, lease, and operate those assets like an airport authority or a spaceport authority would. We do also have a business development side, which really reaches out into the market across the globe to attract those business elements to help develop the space economy in the state of Florida, whether it's attracting a European business over to the United States to develop infrastructure and manufacturing in Florida, or if it's from within the continental U.S. This slide just really kind of shows the breadth of what Space Florida does. We are statewide, 66 opportunities, or I'm sorry, 203 total opportunities for that aerospace growth in the state of Florida, and it's from the Panhandle all the way down to the Keys. This is just a pretty good graphic, and I think John Oberst kind of mentioned Space Florida's capabilities when it comes to funding. This is the Florida Spaceport System. We intentionally use the term system because they are interconnected across the state. We want the ability for all of our space territories and any other space sectors to feed the commercial space industry. So we look at that pretty closely. The Spaceport Improvement Program, that's an FDOT program. So another unique thing for Florida, but it's not a secret, is the Florida Department of Transportation designated space as a mode of transportation. And what that really does is says your mode of transportation, you can tap into the state's DOT funds. So we get about $50 million a year in DOT funding that helps support infrastructure growth for the spaceports across the state, which is a huge help. Some of it is 100%. Some of it is a match fund with investment from commercial entities like SpaceX, like Blue Origin. So we were able to use that fund to help grow the industry here in the state. And just a couple highlights here. Total program incentive since it was inception, over $504 million invested in the state of Florida, but a total industry investment of almost $2 billion in return. So the fund is doing the ROI on the DOT fund is working as it should. I highlighted Florida Spaceport System. We call ourselves quintimodal because every element of transportation in the state, whether it's rail, sea, air, they all feed the commercial space industry in some capacity. So this map kind of shows where our 7 designated space territories are, and those are designated in statute, or they are a licensed spaceport in the state. So our FDOT funding under our Spaceport Improvement Program can be deployed in those areas. And then we're also just making sure the seaports are supporting commercial space. Port Canaveral is one of the big ones that help support SpaceX with booster returns and shipping of cargo into the port to be flown from Cape Canaveral. I mentioned Spaceport System. We don't own all the assets. Space Florida does manage and operate a few licensed spaceports, or have a few licenses, either vertical or horizontal. But we do support other entities like Cecil Spaceport. They are owned by the Jacksonville Aviation Authority, but they are a licensed spaceport in the state. They have a horizontal launch license. So our FDOT program has the ability to provide funds for infrastructure growth at this site to support the aerospace system in the state of Florida. And then there's just a couple of different programs here that are development opportunities they have that they've been wanting to move forward with. The other one is Exploration Spaceport. That's in Titusville. It's right across the river from the Cape. They also are a licensed spaceport, so the same rules apply. If they have opportunities for growth and infrastructure needs, we can use our FDOT funding to help support that. The Launch and Landing Facility, formerly the Shuttle Landing Facility, owned by NASA. Space Florida took it over under a long-term property agreement. It's almost a 60-year lease for about 4,000 acres of the Shuttle Landing Facility, which includes the runway and all the related infrastructure. That is a horizontal launch and landing facility. So we also have an orbital landing license with the FAA. And we've been developing that over the last 10 years to support the commercial space industry as a whole, but also being able to support horizontal launch and horizontal landing from orbit. The little graphic there you kind of see our development plan. We've invested about $100 million into that area, with the environmental work being done on federal property, which did bear fruit with Amazon Kuiper. They have a payload processing facility now on the shuttle landing facility. So they get the benefit of being close to their launch site, but also have the ability to bring in cargo via aircraft. Another complex we own, Launch Complex 46. If you guys have ever seen a map of the peninsula of Florida, it's the little tip at the Cape. It's probably the most prime real estate for a launch on the eastern seaboard. So that's a small to medium class launch site. We've managed that for almost 20 years now, and we've had quite a bit of success with vertical launch, small vertical launch activity. The last one is not developed yet, but Launch Complex 20, also on the Cape. We've been doing the environmental work and planning work to have a second multi-user small-scale launch site within the Cape. We talk about the aspirational goals of growing launch. What Space Florida, what we've done in the past year is, if you hear in the industry congestion at the Cape, that's a real thing. There is congestion, but it may not just be launch directly related congestion. There may be other reasons for the capacity constraint. So we did a big study to look at what some of those capacity constraints are. And these are obviously not as exciting as building a new launch pad, but they are necessary for the growth of the industry at the Cape, and this could translate to other areas in the United States. So we call it the Big Six. We're coining it the Big Six. A lot of these things are capacity that historically has been okay with a launch cadence of maybe 30 to 40 launches a year. But as we see that number tick up to triple digits, 100 to 150 a year, we're starting to see these issues percolate up. So just, the Big Six here, one of them is wastewater. If there's a wastewater treatment plant on site and it's at capacity, what do you do? So you got to work with the county. Either you're developing your own on site, or you're working with your county and city officials to grow their capacity within the ring of your launch site. Wetlands here in Florida, we have wetlands everywhere, so that's always a big concern. The issue we have there is we're running out of wetlands credits in the basin that Cape Canaveral and Kennedy Spacer sit in. So now, with no wetlands credits available, you have to start thinking outside the box of how do you mitigate wetlands somewhere else in the state while you're impacting them near your launch site to allow for that vertical construction growth to happen. Another big one that I'll highlight is the wharf. We've seen with industry that a lot of folks are going to, obviously everyone wants to go to reusability, and return to launch site is not always the best option. So they're using drone ships like SpaceX. They're kind of leading the way with that. Well, those ships have to come back to port, and we're seeing the constraint at Port Canaveral, which is also one of the busiest cruise ship terminals in the United States. So wharf project. So we're seeing if we can create more opportunities within the Port Canaveral to grow space support related ships. And the other ones, obviously more launches, more power, bridges to get to those launch sites, and then the gases when you're going to, a lot of the companies are going to liquid methane. So you have to get the gas there, helium, you have to get the gas there. So there's a lot of opportunity to relieve some of the constraints that we're starting to see at the Cape. I think I might have, this is officially my last slide. So big thing we've talked about, and I think people have alluded to it, is tax-exempt bonds. So last year, Space Florida put in legislation for tax-exempt bonding that just passed law just recently. So it's a big deal. This tax-exempt bond is not something new. Other industries, other modes of transportation have used this for a long time, airports being one of the more popular ones. So the commercial space industry, as it matures, we're going to see these types of things help the industry in its growth. And I think with that is my last slide.
Very good. Thank you, Jamie. So a lot of great ideas and lots of different areas that we've covered. Let's see if we can dive down just a little bit with a few questions. We start with you, John. Talked about a lot of different potential activities for spaceports. Certainly, national security is a potential activity that might take place at a spaceport. In the U.S., there's a lot of talk these days about the Golden Dome initiative. Any thoughts as to how your spaceport might be able to be engaged with that activity?
Yeah. It's the big shiny object. It's the big money pot that's for the foreseeable future. So what we're seeing is increased launch cadence in the vehicle class that we launch at a Kodiak. What that's driving is capacity challenge, both in policy, regulation, and in literally infrastructure. That's why I'm scaling beyond the spaceport. We're capitalizing on our ranges, which the hypersonic launches are going to have to use. So we want to provide options for that over water, over land. Over land allows you to recover a vehicle, over water, not necessarily. So because of that, we need more investment to build the infrastructure for that cadence at Kodiak. And we're looking at yet to be identified dual use capabilities for commercial spaceports, because I believe that from a resiliency perspective, the commercial spaceports have something to contribute to the Golden Dome. And I've had conversations with Space Force on it, and we're looking to see where we can find those synergies with a dual use capability that can be deployed.
Very good. Well, keep us posted on your progress. Jimmy Smith, you mentioned a little bit some of your partnership activities with academia. Could you just say a little bit more about how you work with universities and community colleges and how that can be mutually beneficial, both in terms of future workforce and helping the community?
Yeah, obviously there's a very direct link to the necessary development of the workforce. But in addition to that, we view especially the universities, as a test bed for some of the newer technologies that are being developed, as a starting point for a lot of local entrepreneurs, folks that are PhD candidates or grad students that are working on things that can be spun out into small businesses and helping them develop. This approach that we've kind of taken, not only here at the Houston Spaceport and the Houston Airport Systems, but also with the broader community, is we're all trying to pull in the same direction, right? It's not just that the spaceport develops; it's that Houston develops, and so the partnerships with our universities and being able to utilize the resources they have in conjunction with partnerships at local economic development corporations, in addition to our folks over at NASA JSC and working with them, really all leads to lifting the overall boats, right? The rising tide lifts all boats kind of thing. So we want companies to come to Houston. We want companies that start in Houston to be able to grow in Houston. And the partnerships that we develop with academia, with the nonprofit sector, with industry, all provides that environment that allows for these companies to grow and flourish here in Houston. And we're happy to be part of that. The spaceport will grow as that grows. And so it's really all about being part of the community and having these partnerships and working together to improve life here for everybody.
Very good. Ross, it seems like the UK and Cornwall in particular have a great vision and understanding about clusters and what that can do. But part of that, I think, is understanding how to engage with the local community so that they understand what you're trying to do, and it's not a scary thing to be afraid of. Can you just say a little bit about what your strategy was and how you were able to engage and communicate with and gain support from the local community?
Yeah, I mean that was very important to us, and something we had to take very seriously because, as I said before, this is an area of the country that a lot of these opportunities previously haven't really come here. So one of the things we had to combat early on is people didn't really believe it, or they thought if we were going to create these jobs, then people were just going to move down from London to fill them, and there weren't going to be the sons and daughters and students coming out of the local schools and colleges. So it was initially with Virgin, demonstrating to the supply chain the tangible benefits of this, and that it wasn't just going to be Prime swallowing everything up, and that they proactively wanted to work with the supply chain. It was also then going into the schools, the colleges, and the universities who couldn't have been more supportive and immediately started writing courses. So Cornwall now, bear in mind, I said, when we started out on this program, we were all non-space people and we were just an airport. Cornwall is now one of the best places to study for a space qualification, pathway into the industry anywhere in the country. You could study anything from an apprenticeship up to a postgraduate degree here. So I think, and also, now that we're sort of, 5 or 6 years into the project, we're doing work experience this week. And so we've got 25 students in, 15 of them girls as well, which is really good and not that representative, I don't think, perhaps across the whole of the industry. But we had one of the speakers who came in to speak to them literally lives in the village just outside the spaceport. So he's just completed 3 years of aerospace engineering. He got into aerospace engineering because he was so inspired about what was going on up here at the spaceport and at the airport. And of course, the first thing he wants to do when he's qualified is he comes back and he wants to pass on that baton of inspiration to the younger kids who have just had an amazing week and have just left. We just finished at 4 o'clock this afternoon. So again, I think it's just, making sure that they're aware that this is real, and they've been our biggest supporters. And of course, on the night itself, when the mission was unsuccessful, we had 2,000 local people up here, sold out faster than Glastonbury, crashed the website. So they were reminding us how much we had succeeded straight away, and in this last 2.5 years have been our biggest supporters. And then that works with the local government as well, because it's a local government sponsored project, and it requires ongoing national government support. So we need our MPs to remind the national administration, don't forget about Cornwall. We have invested in this spaceport project for you and this capability. So yeah, our local community is everything about why we do the project, really.
Excellent, great stories. Jimmy Moffatt, you talked a little bit about improvements needed at the port. Could you just say a little bit more about the challenges with collaborating with or competing with the cruise industry compared to the space industry?
Sure. Yeah, and I'll go a little bit one step further with collaboration. Is when you think of Cape Canaveral Spaceport, there's two federal agencies that are under two different legislative guidance that we have to coordinate with. And then there is also the Port Canaveral, who is also another independent authority, port authority. So yeah, the challenges is the Port Authority in itself is they are a profit-driven entity, which is great for the industry. So their challenges is regardless of wanting to support space industry, they have to have some sort of positive ROI, and they get that from the cruise industry. So there's definitely a challenge between supporting space industry and its industry, especially in the maritime side of it, versus another large cruise ship coming in. So we're working closely with the port on some port expansion capabilities that allows both to thrive at the same time.
Excellent. Well, there's a lot more questions, but I think we're running out of time here. So let me thank our speakers again and turn it back over to James for our wrap up.
Well, we are at the bottom of the hour here, so let me just thank everyone for your participation today. As I mentioned, we are having a Spaceport Forum in Sydney in September at the IAC. One of the themes of that forum is going to be a continuation of this discussion. And then also in our January summit in Orlando, the whole theme of that is going to be following up on this very discussion. So looking forward to seeing you all in Florida. Hoping many of you will be able to participate in Sydney. And thank you all for your time today. Bye now.